Do you like scary movies? Well, good, because we're going to talk about Scream, aka Scream 5.
Hello, Sydney. It's an honor.
Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. So today we are going to be talking about Scream, aka Scream 5. I'll probably reference this thing as Scream 5 throughout most of it, just so it doesn't get confusing. But this is going to be, bulk of this review is going to be a non-spoiler review. I'm going to get out, most of my general thoughts there, overall thoughts on the film. Not going to have any spoilers in it, so you guys can watch that, enjoy it, and then what I'm going to do at the very end, I'll give my rating, wait a second, I'll give you guys a heads up, and then I am going to talk about some, spoiler aspects of the film. I figure rather than doing two separate videos, I'm just going to combine them together, so the spoilers will be at the very end of this video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk Scream. So 25 years after the original murders and 10 years since Scream 4, Ghostface returns to Woodsboro to stalk a new group of teenagers and expose secrets from the past. So Scream 5 is directed by Radio Silence, and it is written by James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick. So that's one of the big things, going into this movie is that you don't have Wes Craven directing, this film. It's the first time in the franchise. He directed all 4 of the previous installments, so that was definitely a big deal, going into this movie for sure. Obviously, he passed a few years ago, so was really interested to see how that was going to go. And you have, a different set of writers, which isn't the first time they had someone else, write Scream 3, or at least, kind of co-write that. To start things off, I'm going to give you guys kind of what my mindset was, going into this film. If you guys, know me, know this channel, you know that Scream, the original Scream, is not only one of my favorite horror movies, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, period. And I really liked part 2. 3 and 4 were okay. They definitely have their problems. 3, I know a lot of people hate. I don't hate it as much as some other people do, but it's okay. It's not amazing or anything like that. But I think all the entries in the Scream franchise, after the original are pretty solid. 2 being much better than the other 2, but overall a really solid, franchise that we have. So I was going into this thing, I was excited, getting to see a new Scream movie. I can't believe it's already been 10 years since we had 4, because I remember, seeing that in theaters. But I was also a little nervous, just because sometimes, we've seen it with other franchises where you wait long periods of time to put out another sequel or a requel in this case, and sometimes that just doesn't work out. So I was excited, but definitely a little, cautious going into this thing as well. So we'll start off with the things that I liked about this movie, and there is quite a few things that I actually really enjoy about Scream 5. Overall, really fun time, with this movie. So to start things off, as far as the new cast that we get introduced here, for the most part, I really liked, all these characters. There really actually wasn't anybody that I didn't like, out of this new group of characters. As far as standout characters go, Jasmine Savoy Brown, she also stars in Yellow Jackets, so she plays Randy's niece in the film, and she takes over kind of like the movie nerd, the horror nerd in this film. Really, really liked her character. Obviously, Randy was one of my favorite characters from, the original Scream franchise, that original, trilogy. So I really liked her character. It was awesome to see her, talk about the different movies, talk about the current horror movies, requels, and things like that. That was a lot of fun. And then the other standout character for me was Jenna Ortega. So she plays the sister of the main character of this new group of characters that we get in this film. And I really enjoyed her character overall as well. But like I said, overall as a group, a really good, fresh group of characters that I really enjoyed all of them. There wasn't anybody that I disliked from this group. Sydney, Dewey, and Gale, obviously the legacy characters as they're, referenced throughout this film several times. They are in this movie, but I will give you guys a heads up just so you guys kind of know what to expect going into this movie, because I do feel like the trailer made it seem like that they were going to be a more central focus as far as the plot goes in this film. And while they do have a decent amount of screen time, Dewey maybe a little bit more than the other two, they are not really the central focus this time around. The film focuses more on the new group of characters rather than, these legacy characters. They come in and they play an important part like in the story, but they're not the focus. So if you guys are going into this expecting that, you could possibly be disappointed, so just want to give you that heads up. For me, didn't really bother me because, we've gotten, 4 of these other films where they were pretty big parts of those movies, so I was totally fine with them introducing some new characters, but we still got to see these guys, back in the big screen, and I thought that was really cool. Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox, they were both, really good as their characters. Nice to see them back. As far as the returning characters go, I would definitely say the best performance out of all of them was probably Dewey. I feel like he got, the most to do with his character. So out of them, he was definitely, I think he gave like the best performance. But they were all, really good and nice to just see those guys back again once on the big screen. Now, I would say, as far as Scream 5 goes, this definitely, for me at least, in my opinion, I think it has the darkest tone to it. Definitely feels a little bit more serious at times than the other, 4 previous installments. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely, I feel like the trailers made it seem like it's just like completely serious, but there is a good amount of, comedy still mixed in, and I think they do a good job of balancing, both of those aspects. But for me, there is quite a bit that is a lot darker, and I actually really enjoyed that. I thought that was, really cool to kind of see it go in that direction. And one of the reasons why I think it's a little bit, it feels a little bit more darker too, is because of Ghostface, how he's portrayed in this film. So I've seen, some people might be over-exaggerating just a little bit as far as some of the kills being like, oh my god, they're super brutal. There is definitely, some brutal kills, and I would say this is probably, you could argue this in like maybe, 4, because he had some pretty brutal kills in there too. But you could probably argue that Scream 5 is the most brutal that Ghostface has been up to this point in the franchise. So I think that added to the dark, tone to the film for me. But also just whoever they had as far as the actor, underneath the Ghostface mask, the stunt actor or whatever, they did an excellent job. Just the way that Ghostface moved and carried himself. There was certain scenes that, I don't know, like, I wasn't like scared, but it was intimidating, I guess I would say. So Ghostface, I thought, was excellent in this movie. It was really cool to see him portrayed that way. And I think that they had to do that, this being the 5th entry into the franchise, make him seem a little bit, menacing, like, overall. And I think they definitely nailed that. And now we have to talk about, the meta aspect of the film, because what would a Scream film be if it didn't have that meta aspect? Which is, funny enough, I remember there was like an interview or something kind of early on that they were actually talking about not going the meta direction with, Scream 5, which definitely would have been interesting and probably would have pissed off a lot of people. So I don't know if they decided not to go that way and, they ended up going in that meta direction. But I think the writing here overall, just what they were able to do, what they, talked about in this movie, because they talk about like elevated horror. So, they mention The Babadook, It Follows, The Witch, and things like that, which are all films that I absolutely love. So that was really cool to see them, talking about those movies. They were also talking about like requels, for example, like, reintroducing or the new like Star Wars franchise, with like The Force Awakens. This definitely has an element of that where it's like, you're almost rebooting it, but you're bringing back, you had the legacy characters to introduce these new characters, into the franchise as well. They talk about like Star Wars, the new Halloween, like what they did with that, trilogy, up to this point. So that was definitely a lot of fun. I think they handled that really well. They also talk a little bit about toxic, fandom, and it's not like in a way where it's like, oh my god, like roll your eyes. I think they handled it, really well. And then I actually got a pretty good laugh, several times when they were talking about that. There's like at one point where they're having like a discussion as far as like the original films go, fans of like the original. It's like, you don't want to piss them off. And I just looked over at like 2 of my friends and I was like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of me. I feel like they're kind of talking about me there a little bit. But yeah, there was times that I actually got a pretty good laugh because I was like, yeah, I definitely feels like, they're poking fun at like, the fan base, which for me, I thought that was hilarious. And I thought, that was really, clever writing. But I could see some people maybe not liking that as much. But for me, that aspect, really worked. So when this, movie was getting made, I remember like the directors of the film, Radio Silence, they were talking about that, they really wanted to pay tribute to Wes Craven with, this new Scream movie. And I can tell you guys that I definitely think they do a great job, as far as like that goes. There is a lot in this film that I think that if you are a fan of, the original movie, the original Scream from '96, or even if you're, also if you're a fan of just like the franchise overall, there's a lot of stuff in here that I think that fans will definitely, get a kick out of and really appreciate. So if you guys are fans of the Scream franchise, or even just like slasher, fans like overall, there's quite a bit of like, different Easter eggs and stuff like that I think you guys will really like. And last I'll say is that I've seen some people say that they're like, oh, like this movie's, it's not scary at all. And to me, I guess like for me, I've never really found any of the Screams scary per se. I mean, they have like their moments where it's like, oh, that's pretty creepy if that was to happen. But I've never actually been like scared where there's like movies that actually creep you out and get to me. Scream's never really done that. It's always been a franchise for me that's just been where I'm a big like horror movie fan, just a big movie fan like overall. They're just a lot of fun to watch. They're very easy, rewatchable, like the whole franchise. Like I said, obviously I love the first one. Second one's really good. The other two, kind of like mixed, but I can still like watch them and enjoy, parts of those films as well. So I've always really loved this franchise. Never really been scary, but I will say there is moments in this film that I thought were actually, there is moments of tension that I thought were done really well. So I will give the film that even though it's not scary, there was some pretty tense moments with, certain characters that happen. Honestly, as far as negatives go with this film, and it probably won't surprise some of you guys, but as far as the negatives go, is that the reveal of Ghostface and the motivations behind why Ghostface was doing what Ghostface was, doing, that was definitely like, I'm kind of torn. It's weird. I'm going to see like this movie again. So I'm definitely going to be seeing this in theaters, before it gets released on streaming or, Blu-ray and stuff later. I'm definitely going to be watching this again for sure. Because I want to see how I feel, watching it like the second time to see maybe if it goes up a little bit for me, because I feel like that's definitely possible. And just to see how the ending hits me, kind of knowing what happens now going into it, watching it again, because in a way, I didn't like the reveal and, who it, ends up being and like the motivation, didn't really care for it. But there's also a part of me that was like, there's an aspect to it that I'm like, oh, that's actually, kind of clever and I like what they did there. So I'm a little torn on that aspect. It wasn't like a complete like, oh my God, I wish that, I mean, there is something that I wish would have happened and we'll get into that in spoilers in a second. But yeah, I'm kind of torn, I guess, like overall as far as like that aspect goes. So that's really the thing that kind of brings the film down a little bit for me. And honestly, though, that's been something ever since the first film, 2, 3, 4, they've never really been able to get to that level, with the first film as far as like the reveal and the motivation, never been able to get there. So that's been an issue, throughout the whole franchise. And that's pretty much kind of the same, same place here. But overall, despite that, I think that, Scream or Scream 5 in this case does a great job of honoring Wes Craven's legacy while also, bringing this franchise into modern times and updating it. And I think that, just like Scream fans and slasher fans overall, for the most part, I think we'll find a lot to really enjoy about this film. So I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. All right, so at this point in the video, we are going to be getting into spoilers about Scream, aka Scream 5. This is your fair warning. If you do not want to know anything as far as like spoilers go for this movie, you can stop the video now. Feel free, comment down below or whatever. If you're going to see the movie, give the video a thumbs up, all that good stuff. I appreciate it, guys. But we're going to be talking about spoilers, so this is your fair warning. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into this thing. So there's a couple things as far as like the spoilers go that I wanted to talk about. So as far as like the opening scene in the film, so Scream, the series, is always known for its openings. You know, that's definitely become like a mainstay, you know, in the franchise. And this opens up with Jenna Ortega, you know, her character at the house. And it definitely, you know, it pays tribute to the opening of the original Scream as far as like Drew, you know, Barrymore being there. And I really like the opening here. I mean, I love the homage to the original, you know, film, but just Jenna Ortega, like I told you guys, she was one of my favorite characters in this film. And surprise, she actually does not die in the beginning of this movie, which I was actually, you know, caught off guard by that, you know, because up to this point, everyone always dies like in the beginning of the, you know, the film. So I was kind of surprised by that. So that was a way to kind of, you know, switch it up a little bit. So I really, you know, appreciated that. The next thing that I wanted to, you know, talk about was just the, so our main character, Sam Carpenter, played by Melissa Barea. So she's, you know, the main character of the film. She's the sister to Tara, played by Jenna Ortega. And we find out, you know, pretty early on, actually, in the movie, which wasn't really expecting that either, but we find out that she is actually the secret daughter of Billy Loomis from the original film. So I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't expecting, you know, that to happen in this movie, but that's, you know, that's pretty cool. And we actually get to see Billy Loomis, you know, in this movie. You know, she has these like visions where she'll see her father, you know, pop up like in the car at like one time, and just these different things. And they kind of explain that that's why she stepped away from her family, because she was worried she was going to turn out, you know, like her dad, and found out, you know, he was a serial killer and all this stuff. So she kind of, you know, ran away from her family because she thought she was going to be like him, and she kind of messed things up with like her family, she felt like. So she ran away. And the only thing that I will say with her character that I was kind of nervous when she started seeing the visions of Billy, you know, like in the car and stuff like that. I was like, please, for the love of God, I got this feeling in the pit of my stomach, and I was like, please do not go the route of that, you know, she ends up being revealed as the killer, and that it's like some kind of split personality thing, you know, Billy taking over, something like that, because I was like, ooh, do not go there, because that will actually kind of piss me off. It worked for, like, the movie that comes to mind is My Bloody Valentine 3D, when you find out that, you know, spoilers, Jensen Ackles' character, like, he's actually the killer in the movie. That worked for her, but I was like, do not go that route with Scream. That would have rubbed me the wrong way. And luckily, they do not do that. And it was really cool to see Skeet Ulrich, you know, come back. At times, I told my friends, they de-aged him, and there was a couple times where it looked a little weird to me. I feel like he could have just, like, shaved, and that would have looked, you know, totally fine. Like, I know he's older, but for me, I think that would have been, you know, completely fine. The only thing with, like, with seeing him, the visions, that I guess was, like, a little weird to me, and I don't know if some of you guys will agree with this or not, but, like, him popping up, and especially, like, towards the end where he kind of saves, you know, his daughter, they almost make it, you know, that he's, like, trying to be, like, almost like a good guy and help her. And I know that's, like, his daughter, but he's also a serial killer, so I don't think he would really, you know, give a shit to a degree. So that was, like, a little weird. Like, it wasn't something that, like, completely bothered me, but I just thought it was a little weird. So I don't know if any of you guys feel that same way about it as well. The next thing was that, so Judy Hicks, you know, she's back in this film. So that was cool, you know, to see her, you know, come back. And she has her son, who's Wes Hicks. And so at one point, you know, she goes off to go get, like, lunch or something like that. And, you know, Ghostface ends up, like, calling her, telling he's going to kill her son. So she, you know, races back to the house to try and save him, you know, tries calling him, but he doesn't answer. And they do a nice little tribute to Psycho there. That was, you know, that was really cool, kind of flipping that around. And so she's racing back. And, you know, you kept, like, we were waiting, you know, watching the movie, and I was expecting, like, him to die. But what they actually do is that she gets back to the house, and it's in the middle of the day. Was not expecting. She goes up, Ghostface comes out, and kills her right in the middle of the day. I was like, wow, was not expecting that at all. So, right in the middle of the day, you know, kills her, and I feel like we haven't really gotten, I'm trying to, like, think off the top of my head really quickly as far as, like, the Scream films go, like, middle of the day deaths like that, other than Principal Hembry. I'm thinking of, like, the original film, because he died, like, in the school. But most of the times, it happens at night. So I was really surprised by that. And then her son, he ends up getting killed as well. Pretty brutally, gets like the knife through like his neck and it like pokes out like through his cheek. That was definitely a pretty brutal death. So that was one of the deaths where I was like, oh, holy shit. We also get the death of Dewey in this movie, which was something that, it didn't completely shock me, going into this movie. I figured one, we were probably going to lose at least like one of the, main characters, or one of them or two of them, or possibly could end up being, the Ghostface, killer at the end of the movie. I figured something like that was going to happen. So, but it does, even though knowing that, it still definitely sucks, losing Dewey in this movie, just because, we've had that character for, it's crazy to think about, like the original film, 25 years old, but it's like this, we've had Scream movies in like 3 different, decades now, which is pretty wild. So it's definitely sad to lose that character. But I think that he went out, with a bang as far as just like his performance, definitely the best performance as far as like the returning characters, go. So I felt like he got a good amount to do in this film. So while it sucks, he definitely gave a good performance. But yeah, so we lose Dewey in Scream 5. And then finally, so what we're, talk about is the Ghostface reveal. So it ends up being Richie, which is the boyfriend of Sam, the main character in the film. And then the other character, or the other Ghostface, is Amber, which you actually find out that they're dating or whatever. So that's, kind of weird. But yeah, so they're the ghost faces in this movie, and you end up finding out that they are sick and tired of the Stab franchise being treated the way it's been treated, and they want to create, new material so that way they can, reboot the franchise. So like I said, I'm kind of torn like on that as far as like the reveal of the two killers. I was like, okay, like in a way, I like the whole idea. It's like, oh, they're sick and tired of the franchise being treated the way it is, and just dealing with that whole aspect of, like requels and sequels and things like that. I thought, that's, kind of clever. But just like as far as like the two characters goes, those characters being the killers, I was kind of like, eh. But again, like I told you guys, I definitely want to watch this movie again, like going into it knowing that's going to be the case, and see if that changes my opinion at all. Because honestly, and some of you guys might kind of roll your eyes, because you're going to be like, this is exactly what the movie, is talking about to some degree. But I honestly kind of thought that Stu was going to be behind everything with this movie, because with the fact that we saw the flashbacks or like the visions of Billy, and they mentioned, Stu kind of like early on, but then didn't really mention him, much more. So I was like, I kind of have a feeling that he might be, like, I almost expected we got the reveal of these two characters, and then I thought that, I was like, in another twist, they were going to show that Stu was actually, going to be behind everything, especially where it took place at his house and everything like that. I really thought that was the way that they were going to go. And I was really kind of hoping for that, because I thought that would have been cool. I know a lot of people, they're like, oh, Stu died in the first movie. And like, you definitely could say that he did, because he got a TV dropped on his head and everything. So I could see why you say that. But I could also, if they wanted to say he survived and originally he was supposed to, he was supposed to be back for Scream 3, then I would be totally fine with that. And Stu is a great character. So I really kind of wanted them to go in that direction, and they didn't do that. Not something that like pissed me off. I could have been like, oh my god, like fuck this. They didn't have Stu in the film, and it just ruins the whole movie. But for me, that's just kind of how I thought they were, the direction that they were going, and I wish they would have done that, because I think if they did that, it would have made this movie, quite a bit more better for me. I mean, it's still like an 8 out of 10. But it would have been right up there. Like, I would say it would probably definitely be my second favorite movie in the franchise, up to this point. So that's it, as far as like spoilers go. Those are kind of, I think, like some of the bigger things. You also get to see Randy's sister. She's in the movie as well. So that was cool, to see her back. So, and they do a great job as far as like paying tribute to Wes. This whole movie is kind of like a tribute to the original Scream. Like, there is a lot of shots where it's like almost like recreations of that original film. You get to go into Stu's house, you know, at the end, you see like the kitchen where Billy and Stu were. You have like that whole sequence. There was a lot of really, really cool stuff. If you're a fan of the original film, fan of the franchise, like I said, you get some of these different characters that pop in. There's a lot of stuff that you're really going to enjoy. I know I did. Both of the friends that I went with, and one of them, you know, she is not as big of a fan of the franchise, and she still really enjoyed it. So there's definitely a lot of fun to be had here. But I can also see if you guys do have issues with the film, you know, I can completely understand that as well. I feel like if you're not as big of a fan of the franchise, maybe you won't have as much fun with it, but I still think there's a good amount of fun to be had there, like overall. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Scream. So again, you know, if you guys made it to this point in the video, definitely want to hear your thoughts. If you do leave any spoiler comments, just make sure to, you know, put like a couple like periods so that way, and put spoilers so people know that you're going to be talking spoilers, just so that way everyone gets a chance to, you know, to watch the movie and watch it fresh and not have it ruined for them. So, but again, if you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give this video a thumbs up. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.